So now let's go through and start reading some of the instructions together. This first section goes over how this is the first major project in the course, which means it's going to be bigger scale than what we've done before. And that's very exciting because we're going to start writing more realistic programs, but also means it can be a bit tougher. I want to remind you that you can definitely collaborate with each other. I strongly recommend you and your cohort just get on Zoom with each other and try working together on this stuff. The next section below it has some high-level advice. First, it mentions that you are not defining any functions inside of other functions. You'll never do that in this course. We're going to define a lot of functions, all of them at the top level, and then we're going to call them from other functions. So it's very different from defining functions inside of each other. We're calling them from each other. The next big thing is about whether you have the right answer. So every semester, someone writes every line of code without ever running their code through BlockPy. Then they wait until the assignment deadline to submit, and they're surprised to find out that they end up earning a 0%. And they'll say, Dr. Bart, I wrote every function. Why did I lose points? The answer is because they were wrong. Very, very slightly wrong in a lot of places. And maybe sometimes even just almost no places. They would have known this if they had run their code through BlockPy. The assignment is going to give you feedback along the way, but only if you are running your code regularly. Whenever you think you finished in a function, run the code and check to make sure, because you really have to follow the instructions super closely. Every line printed must be exactly correct. It's super fussy. Now, the last thing before we get started coding is to look at this big overview diagram. I know it looks complicated, but don't be intimidated. This shows all the functions we're going to write and how they interact with each other. It'll come in handy when we are trying to figure out how to write some of the bigger functions like main and login and handle request. The important thing to notice now is that there are the black arrows showing how data flows through the program. And there's little green numbers that show the order that things are flowing. So it goes from 4 over to 5 to 6 to 7 to 8. The first function that gets called is main, which is actually the last function we have you define. So it's not as simple as 1, 2, 3, 4 in terms of defining these things. The main function calls input username and login and handle request. The login function, if you look at it, calls get pin. However, before main gets to call the handle request function. So it calls input username, login, and handle request in that order. But login is going to call get pin before main gets to call handle request. It's really important to understand the order, the flow of functions in this program. Now, when we start trying to piece together all the functions we end up writing, when we get to the end of all the other functions, the main function, this diagram can be a helpful guide in making sense of the overall order. But for now, let's just put it aside and just get started writing some code.